This meeting is being recorded.
If everyone could come in and mute yourselves, that would be most helpful for helping with feedback.
Come in and mute.
Where did we mute that?
All right, looks like we got a few more people still logging on. As Sona said, if you wouldn't mind, please mute your microphones. We will have some time to have you unmute and ask any questions that you would like throughout the evening here. I'd like to say good evening to everybody. My name is Doug Edge. I serve as the president for the American Australian White Sheep Breeders Association here in the U.S. I am based in Indiana, just a little bit northeast of Indianapolis. Sona Craig is also joining me along with David Kreider, our other two board members. And we'd like to say, first of all, thank you for taking time out of your evening to be with us and learn more about this awesome breed that we're very excited about that is now making its way across the U.S. I have a map up right now. Hopefully you guys can see that on my screen. This is on pedigree.dev, which is our registry site that John Lipstate has put together for us. We're pretty excited about this in terms of innovation and kind of a state-of-the-art registry for breed associations and societies. And John has done a excellent job of getting this stood up for us and functional. And the map that you're looking at on the screen here shows you where some of the first breeders and animals are located throughout the country. We are still in the process of getting all the animals into the registry. There's a number of folks that we did Zooms with to kind of help them through the process and try to make sure that we're getting everything put in accurately. And we're phasing those animals into the system right now. And I think we're really prepared here to kind of open this up now and let everyone get their animals registered that need to do that from the previous shipments of embryos that have come in. So with that, I want to make a few announcements about the association. If you're new and just learning and here to kind of explore the opportunity that the breed has to offer, we do have a website. It is AAWSBA.com, and that website will help answer any questions you might have about the breed or the association that we have here in the U.S. I will tell you there is one other that we're aware of, at least, a breed association out there that has promoted the Australian whites here in the U.S. We are the association that is affiliated with the Australian White Breed Association in Australia. And all of our genetics in our association have been imported directly from Tatterkills in Australia. Graham Gilmore is with us here this evening from Australia. He'll be conducting part of this meeting here this evening. And I've also invited Dax Dietrich from Texas, who is also a member of the association and has been importing these embryos in. He is a senior buyer for the Fulton Market Group. And this evening's discussion will be centered around the meat quality of this breed, the eating quality of this breed, if you will. It's very fascinating to see how these genetics have been put together to create a superior lamb product offering. And we're excited to have that here in the U.S. and being able to promote that here with the American Australian White Sheep Breeders Association. So with that, as I mentioned, we will have some time for some questions here as we go along. We do want to make sure that everyone is included. I'm just checking to make sure that we do have, I see Dax is on. Graham, are you with us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, yep, there you are. Great.
Okay.
So good. We've got Graham and Dax both. And I'm going to start out with Graham here this evening. And Graham, please, for all the folks, we do have quite a big group logging on. There's still more joining us as we speak here this evening. So that's exciting. But I'd like to have you kind of, for those that are maybe new to this, to the call or to the breed, kind of give us a little bit of an overview before we get into the meat quality discussion.
Okay, so what a similar overview to what I did last time, in
Yes,
case there's
please.
new people. Yeah,
Yeah.
look, the breed was designed to be an easy care sheep, to have hair rather than wool, very similar to Katahdin, and also with that to have a quality carcass, be polyestrous join all year round, black feet for stronger feet. And the quality of the carcass is certainly starting to come to the fore. So fast growth, that's basically what it was designed to do. And in the designing of this breed, some of the breeds we put together came up with some pretty unique eating qualities. So that's sort of a very quick idea of it. The thought came out of Brazil, where I saw Santanese sheep, which are a head sheep, and I didn't even realise that head sheep were a big issue, but they were in many parts of the world. So we decided, with wool prices coming back and the cost of shearing going up, that the answer to a shedding sheep was a head sheep rather than a sheep that sheds wool, because in colder conditions, those sheep that are wool shedders don't like shedding the wool. They hold it, and you have all the same problems you have with wool sheep. So that was basically the idea around it. And then we came home and designed the breed like you would design a car. It's got 4 legs, a head, and a body, and we wanted to put hair on it, so we had to put certain breeds in. We wanted polyestrous, so we needed certain breeds for that. We wanted black points, nose, feet, backsides, so we had to put a breed in for that. And then mix those breeds together and select it for the traits that we were looking for to create a purebred breed. And that's what we've got today.
Thanks, Graham. Talk a little bit, if you will, about you mentioned you put this together like you would design a car, obviously with the meat quality aspect kind of at the forefront. You've done a tremendous amount of research and testing over there in Australia. Get into a little bit of that with us. What are you really finding that's a differentiator of this breed as we compare them to other breeds out
Yeah.
there?
Okay, well, what we found in the early stages is there was a difference in the meat eating quality from some of the early crossing that we did. So the 4 breeds that we used were Poll Dorset stud ewes, that were Tatterkill stud ewes, and Texel stud ewes, all registered sheep, not from a commercial base. And we crossed Von Rui, which is a head breed out of South America. For those of you who don't know that, it looks a bit like a Brahman, I suppose, but it's got hair. So we needed that. And then we used the White Dorper, another shedding breed as well. So they were the breeds we used. We found that we had something pretty unique in the eating quality, which was basically we realised we had a very low melting point in the fat. To give you an example on that, fat on your average normal sheep, so a Hampshire, a Suffolk, a Dorset, is around the 42 to 44 degrees Celsius. So you're going to have to work that out for yourselves. When we started testing the Australian white, we were averaging 37, not 44 or 42. We had nothing go over 40 degrees. So this is intramuscular fat testing. So intramuscular fat melts at a lower point than subcutaneous, the fat that's around the outside of the sheep. So in finding that, we then started testing, and since then we've done a lot of testing, a lot of selection around those tests where they were live biopsies that we took from the animals, knocked them out and took a piece about 5 grams, so about the size of your thumbnail. We took that out and sent it to the laboratory, so a university where we had a PhD student working and has been working for 7 or 8 years full time on what we're claiming is the reason that the meat is different. So once we started testing, we've now got the melting point down to about 34 degrees, and that's on average. Some of it's much lower than that. But like everything, you've got to be careful not to push one trait, or you might create another problem by making it too much softer. So the comparison with Wagyu is not intramuscular fat and heaps of globulated fat in the meat. The fat that's in the Australian white is a very fine, what we call micro marbling in the meat. And the comparison with Wagyu is the melting point. So melting point is softness of meat. And what we discovered when we started testing is it's also got to the melting point in the omega-3s, the EPA and DHA omegas are very closely linked to the melting point of the fat. So then the story's gone on a long way from that, that we now have a DNA marker test. So it's not a 50K chip where someone's thrown paint at a wall to see where the paint sits and maybe it's eating quality. What we've found is more diagnostic. So we test for 3 alleles basically, or 3 pairs. We don't have to test for 50,000. It's just 3, and then we have actually locked the rights for testing on that up. The fact that we've found them, so we don't have to do biopsies anymore. We can take a blood test to make sure that we're honing the brood in the right way. We don't sell that test to genomic companies because if we do, they'll promote the hell out of it, and you'll have people selecting on single issues on that test, which would be a negative for the breed. We are asking people to trust that the parent stud has the ability to not push one of those markers too much. And to give you an example on that, if you go too hard on melting point, one of the issues is when you've got your animals in the slaughterhouse, the abattoir, that the skins will peel and peel the bark off the outside membrane on top of the fat. They'll peel that off if it gets too soft. So they're the reasons we don't push down to be 24 instead of 34, or we've created a problem that is an issue. So that's sort of basically where it sits. I have sent Doug some information on some of our early testing that was all done through biopsies. Have you got that there, Doug?
Yeah, I'll share that right now. Are you seeing the screen with the data?
I'm not getting it yet, but I can look at it if it's up there for everybody else.
Let's try that again.
Not yet, Doug.
Okay.
Here it comes, I think.
Here it comes. Okay, so the first one is the melting point. So that they do 2 tests on the melting point. So this is all in Celsius. It's not in Fahrenheit. I'm sorry. So these were young ewes that we tested, and you can see they got the pedigree, which this is all revolving around a pedigree. If we don't know the pedigree for generation after generation, we don't know whether this trait is heritable. So to make it heritable, we are line breeders. We're not breeding for heterosis, because you could have, if you put heterosis in there, you could have an animal that had an extremely low melting point, but it would not have the ability to pass that on to its progeny. So in this, you're seeing the best ewe there on melting point alone was 28 degrees, tested twice, and she came up as 28. The worst one there was 30. And the mean is just the joining of those two, MP1, melting point 1, melting point 2, and then you come up with the mean melting point. Then we move on to we did have some Pole Dorsets that we used as and it was our Pole Dorsets. We don't use other people's sheep. That's not fair on anybody else. The Pole Dorset ewes were 40 degrees in melting point with a deviation of 1 degree. The Australian whites were 34.1 with a deviation of 2.5 degrees from the best to the worst. So they're very tight in their in the melting point side. So that was our way of seeing, what are they any better than Dorsets? And just to give you an example, the chap that's doing this, a Dooley Malou, professor, is the most experienced in testing meat sheep in Australia. He's been doing it for over 30 years now, and he was involved in finding the DNA markers in Wagyu for melting points and IMF. So he was taken to Japan for a few years by Professor Komatsu, and he was the PhD student looking for those traits. So when he came up on our Pole Dorset ewes, he said, well, your average of 40 degrees is about at least 2 degrees better than any other Dorsets he'd selected for. And he said, your variation's not much, like it's only 1 degree in the variation. So that was how we knew we were in front of what we had in Pole Dorsets. We knew that from eating it, tasting it, cooking the meat, the fat melting in the fry pan. When you go to clean it before before the water gets hot, the fat will run away. So it's a lower melting point fat. And the beauty of that is it doesn't give you a waxy taste on your palate when you're eating the meat. So that's the advantage of it. So a lot of people don't like, and in particular, I think in America, the studies have proven people don't like that fatty aftertaste and the waxiness setting in their mouth and the palate or in your stomach. So that was the first test that we ran. Then the next one underneath that is for intramuscular fat. Our average IMF there, intramuscular fat, and these are not fed sheep, these are on grass, was from 8.2% to 6.5. The overall mean they're saying up there was 4.4, which seems low. I don't know, I think that might be a misprint. But the Dorsets weren't as fat either. IMF, what we have proven in the meantime is that IMF is not the only driver for eating quality. You need some IMF there, but whether it's 4% or 8%, we can't pick the difference in how the meat eats. So that's the IMF side. We would test for that as well and select for it. The next one, if you can click on to the omega-3 one. Sonia, are you doing that or is it?
No, I've got it here. I've only got the 2 images. Should I have another one?
Yeah, there should be another one.
Oops.
The second image. Yeah, it's just there's a second page. You haven't got that?
I don't have anything.
Yeah, I think. Let me go back to that other one. Maybe it was there and I just didn't see it.
Yeah, there was two images attached. The first one had the third one's the omega one, and that's probably the important one. I can flick it to you again.
Yeah, I don't see that one. I got 2 images, but this one's.
Yeah, there is a second one there that went to you on WhatsApp.
Shoot.
On WhatsApp?
If you have, you can share the screen too if you want, Graham.
Yeah, I haven't got it on that.
Okay.
I'm not forward. I've just forwarded that one to you again, Doug.
Okay.
And it's the real difference. The game changer is the omegas. So whilst you try and find that and get it up, to give you an example, omega-3s, the health beneficial omega-3s are EPA and DHA. Are the two that everybody's chasing. So if you're taking fish oil tablets, that's what you get. That's the first one. Again, so they're what people are chasing on the omega-3. So if you go into fish, a lot of people will tell you that there's 2,000 megajoules in fish. They're correct, but that's if you take all the omegas involved. If you take out EPA and DHA, it's the best of it's 200. So what we're sitting at is we're sitting around an average of 40 or anything from 34 to 40 megajoules per 100 grams of omega-3s. So those omega-3s are the thing that makes it's the health benefits of the lamb. Normal lamb would have about 10 megajoules. This one is through the roof. Our scientists can't believe how good it is. And it's just a combination of a couple of the breeds that caused it. I won't call it a mutation. It was just a bit of luck that it came in. So on this, that is the reason that the meat retains moisture. It's inclined to swell when you cook it. So from a restaurant perspective, when they buy a piece of meat, it doesn't shrivel up, which lamb is very much inclined to do. And to give you examples of what we're doing with, say, grind, we call them patties here, but burgers. The grind on an Australian white, if we start at 160 grams, after it's cooked, it's still 125 grams. So we're not losing. Here we go. It's up there now. We're not losing much in weight once it's cooked. One of our competitors here, that's actually lamb that's sold in America, we bought their patties, and when they were cooked, they started at 150 grams, and they ended up 84. So they lost 20% more of weight after they were cooked. So and the same thing happens with all the cuts of Australian white. You don't lose as much after cooking, and the reason for that is just moisture retention. It holds moisture in the meat. It's not just the fat; it's the omegas, the oleic acid, as well as the omegas. So that there was the top 18 ewes that we did. So what we did at that stage, all those ewes were selected on. So the UIDs in the second column, they're sent to our team in the university as just in a vacuum number in the container. We don't give them the pedigrees until they've done all the testing, and then we send the pedigrees before we see the testing. So it can't be manipulated by the scientists or by us, because they don't know the pedigree and we don't know the results. So we give them the pedigree after the results, and then they put it all together. They've got sire and dam, and then quite obviously those 18 ewes there we flushed to the best rams, and just kept doing that for generation and generation, so that we've basically put those qualities right through the meat. There's a lot of conjecture around whether it's better or not. Other breeds are obviously saying it's not, and they've got the same thing, because some of them have some similar traits in there. What I can tell you is nobody's printed any data that they've got. We've printed all the data. This data is there available for anyone that wants to look at it. We've printed 6 peer-reviewed articles by our research team in international magazines, so they've been peer-reviewed. You can't really break them down from that, and those articles are quite highly read and sought after, even to the stage that we've done different things with feeding different supplements to the sheep if they need it. So if it's a drought here and they haven't got enough feed, then we actually have a supplement that I don't own any of that. The professor that's designed that does, but we can give them a feed to actually enhance melting point. One of the big problems of feeding the animals particular things trying to enhance is sometimes it might enhance the melting point or the omegas or the IMF, but it doesn't enhance the eating quality. So what we've actually found is the best eating quality is off straight grass. That's where we're getting the best eating quality. So when people, and I did notice there was something came up on one of the Facebook sites about what's all the stuff about the eating quality. Well, it's very simple. It's low melting point, high omegas. So that's basically what it comes down to give you an idea of the traits that are shown through in this. I did send Doug a video of a ground patty, which I'm sure he's got that one. He did see it. And when that comes up, it's sort of self-explanatory of what happens.
Are you seeing it there on the screen?
I'm
Nope.
not seeing it. No.
Not yet. Okay. Try that again.
I don't need to see it. I ate it.
There we go. That should be it.
Okay. Right. So if you hit play on that, excuse the old nailed hand that's holding it, but that's cooked, I think, correctly, Dax. Not overcooked.
Looks good.
Yeah. Now, what I want to explain on this is something that we're working on that's new. That's actually a ground patty made from a 7-year-old Australian white ewe. Now, the beauty of this is that does not smell when you cook it. So normally when you be cooking some mutton, you have a very ordinary aroma with it. Even some lamb is very strong on the smell when it's cooking. The Australian white lamb there's virtually no smell when you're cooking it. So, for example, that patty had a small amount of Italian herbs, salt and pepper. There was nothing else in it. And all you could smell when it was cooking was the Italian herbs and spices. You don't get any lamby smell at all. The other thing that's quite unique about it is the amount of moisture that it holds. So that's not fat that's running out. If you look to the right of that, you'll see the small bubbles of fat on the side. It's in what's run out of it. That is actually just moisture retention. So the moisture retention is coming from the high omegas. That patty, when it was put on the barbecue to cook, was half that width. So it shrunk on the outside diameter, but it expanded on. So it was quite a deep patty where it started out quite not quite so thick. So as I said, we lost on that. We lost 25%. We lost from the fresh product to the cooked product. There is no binder in that at all. There's been no binder used. It is 100% Australian white lamb, and this opens up a whole new area for our sheep industry, because basically not many people or not many consumers want to buy mutton. It's a very cheap product, and it's a product that's probably a lot sold into India and all sorts of places where they use a lot of curries, and basically it's just a filler. But in this case, that sheep at 7 years old, we could not, on taste testing, we could not tell the difference on that patty to a lamb patty where it was 6 months old. So that's
Wow.
no smell when it's cooking, no difference. The fattiness in your mouth was no difference to the lamb. So, and we are at the moment testing some of these older ewes. So it opens up a grind program for your older sheep, where, well, in this country, your older sheep are worth half as much per kilo or pound as what the younger ones are worth. Normally, sometimes they're dearer, but normally it's about half price, and you can value add that very quickly.
So, Graham, we are getting several questions coming through over on the chat, and I think this is probably a good opportunity just to, if you do have a question, you want to open up your microphone and ask here to Graham those questions, whether they be in chat or if you have different questions. If we don't get to them verbally here, we'll ask them from the chat line there. You're welcome to put them in either place, but if you want to unmute and ask Graham some of these questions, there's good ones coming through here. We can do that at this point, take a quick break and let Graham answer a few questions.
Graham, could you go into how using other breeds could lose the eating quality and all of that?
That's a good question, Sonia. I'm
Yes,
assuming.
sir. Yes.
Yeah. You sound very much like Sonia anyway. That's exactly right. If you put lemonade in a beer, turn it into a shandy, you can never turn it back into a beer. The only way to do is get a fresh glass and pour a beer. That's basically how I explain it. As soon as you put something else in, you water it down, and it's not as good. It can certainly have a good effect on in an upgrading program. It can have a wonderful effect on improving quality of meat, but that's something that we've been very hard on trying to keep the breed very stable. If you've nobody like you do a lot of or hear a lot of crossing in Wagyus, and they're sold as F1s, and it certainly has an effect at F1, but you don't hear of people selling Wagyu as F2. So if you want to use it, you use it as a terminal and do one cross, and then you stop. If you want to retain that in your seed stock, you can't have a mixture in your seed stock, and that's why in Australia and the US and a couple of like even in China, we were very against people crossing and selling rams from the crosses, because then it's watered down. You get no difference. It doesn't change things. So the simple answer is yes. Technically, I haven't done a lot of work on working that out, because we're now to the stage here where so many people are through to their commercial sheep being purebreds that it's irrelevant, because they're not going back to other breeds. Some that have found the variation is great. Too much variation in carcass shape and eating quality.
It's a similar question, I think, to that, and I think you've addressed here a little bit already. But the question in the chat is, at what F level will these traits start to be noticed? Has there been any studies done on that, Graham? Like,
we've seen it. We've seen a change at F1, but I don't have the data on. We can just see the change in the eating quality when we eat it ourselves, but we don't. It's very expensive to get this testing done, so we don't have it at F1, F2, F3. But we know by the time they're F3s, you've virtually got the full impact if you keep using rams that hold that correct breeding.
Another question in the chat here, and again, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. How much does grain feeding affect the omegas in terms of the fat quality? And is there any data on that?
We have some data on it where we did a trial. We did a trial on canola, brassica, lambs feeding on brassica. We had a control group just on grass. We had one lot with a standard pellet that the company we're using said would be wonderful, and then another pellet that was designed by our professor, and the grass fed was second in line to the one that won it on the actual testing, not tasting, but just the testing for melting point and omegas, was the pellet that was given that the professor designed, and that there is flaxseed oil in that. And we know in America, one chap I was talking to in America earlier in the year was saying that, or late last year, sorry, that flaxseed oil had been used in the cattle industry as well to enhance. So that has the secret to everything that's in it is still with the professor. Second in line was straight grass. Third in line was the pellet from the feed company, but that wasn't as good as no pellet. It lessened it. And off brassica, you couldn't eat it. We threw that away because it tainted the meat. So brassica's canola, if you drive past a stand of canola, brassica, you can smell it when you drive past. Well, that smell goes through the meat if the lambs are eating it. So, and a lot of lambs in Australia are finished on canola or brassica. So on the grain won't enhance, or we haven't found it has enhanced the eating quality itself. But there would be some ways of feeding that would certainly improve it. And I understand that in the US, like in Australia, there are places that you will have to supplement to get your lambs into the right condition to kill. So that happens here as well in our drier areas. If you've got green grass, you don't need to be feeding them anything. I
So
hope
along the
that
same,
answers the question.
Graham, along the same lines here, Adrian is asking in the chat here, are there any specific types of pasture grasses you recommend or don't recommend for this breed?
They seem to do very well on a vast range of grasses in this country. We've got a very diverse country where it ranges from deserts through to the high rainfall green country, and that's where the breed's been developed at 4,000 feet above sea level. Snow country, so snows half a dozen times a year on average, and probably only 2 inches, sometimes 6 inches or a foot occasionally. So it's in wetter conditions, green grass, so it's ryegrass clovers basically, but then also fescues. They actually do reasonably well on fescue, the older sheep, and other similar grasses to fescues, cocksfoot and different things like that. Then you move into some of the areas where they're browsing bushes, and they're still doing well. So they are doing well in different places. They on the coast they're eating kikuyu grass, which they don't obviously do as well because it's like green cardboard, but they will live on it. So it's a vast range they're working on, and we're finding people are using lick feeders, so feeders that the lamb's got to lick a bit of grain or pellet to get just a small amount to supplement. We get a fair bit of that, but most of our lamb is finished on grass.
Okay.
Graham, Sonic Craig again.
Yeah.
On the fescue stuff, the people who have them on fescue, are they noticing a difference in the shedding of them? I know I have a friend in Oklahoma who runs Dorpers, and they think that the fescue affects the shedding at times.
Shedding's something that is seasonal. It's driven by protein. If the animal's doing really poorly, it might shed because of that. If it's doing really well, it might decide to hold the hair coat. It certainly changes on different foods. What we have found in Australia, particularly on the lambs, is that when people feed them really high protein, they don't like it. They do better on lesser protein feeds than higher. So it's been a standard thing in Australia. If your lambs aren't doing well, you give them more high protein, and that'll get them moving. When you do that with an Australian mite, they don't like it. So, so that's where it sits on that side. We're seeing if they're on. We've got people running them on lucerne or alfalfa and clovers, and they do all right. So just there's a difference, but the shedding thing can be very much driven by protein, by climate, a change in the climate. Certainly, once I think for those of you that's got the pure Australian mites, you would see that there's a vast difference in a female and how she sheds when she's 2-year-old compared to what she shed when she was 6 months or 10 months old. Going through that cycle of having a lamb, that will help them shed as well.
Graham, a couple other questions we're seeing here, and obviously our focus here tonight is around
Eating
meat
quality,
quality, but a couple questions.
Parasite resistance. I saw that one.
Resistance. Yep. What environment? What's your thought?
Parasite. We're in a wet area where we certainly have to drench. We're not seeing any difference between the Australian white and our other wool sheep, the Poll Dorset. We're not seeing any difference. You'll see a difference if your animal's a hybrid, then it will be more resistant to worms if it's a hybrid than if it's purebred. So yeah, we're not seeing much difference on that. But what I would say is, I do know in Alabama, when I saw the sheep there, they were losing catardinus with worms, Barber's pole, and they decided to do a worm test. The catardins didn't have huge numbers of worms. They were high enough, but not disastrous, but they were losing ewes on it. They decided to test the purebreds. So this was on Daniel Fagerman's. They tested the purebreds, being Australian whites, and they had much higher levels of worms than the Katahdin, but they had the ability to handle a worm burden or live with a worm burden. And I think that's something that a lot of people have tried to breed sheep that are worm resistant, resistant to worms. I think it's better to have a sheep that can handle a worm burden is probably a more important thing. Does that answer the question? Or
I think so. One other question that just came up is there a recommended protein level? I'm certain that would vary what we're talking about here.
I think like 14% proteins, all that they would do. Look, when I've got sheep here at the moment that are on, they're on silage and virtually nothing else, just silage, and they're doing like steam. Those sheep had no pellets or anything until about Christmas time. We're going to take them to Sydney Royal in a month or so, a couple of months. And that being the case, you've got to have some grain in them. When we do our Pole Dorsets, they've been on barley, a little bit of corn, lupins, and lucerne in a mix that we mix ourselves, and they're going to be fed well for months and months and months to get them right. The Australian white doesn't need that, and I think at 9.5 months, our top 8 rams averaged 108 kilos. So that's for somebody else to work out again. I'm not in pounds. So what average age will they reach? 120 on grass. So from the question came in is on the what weight will they reach on grass? Yeah. We are averaging a dead weight of about 27 or 8 kilos at 5 to 6 months of age on grass. So that equates to about 54 kilograms live weight. So their dressing percentage is reasonably high. They're 50 to 54% is normal, depending on what food they're on and where they've come from. But the bottom of you might take, to get that same weight, it might take 8 months, not 5. The tops of them would go at 5. That's on grass. And that's for Laura is that is good, but that's when it's done properly. I know plenty that don't get that because they're not doing it properly, but they would be inclined to blame the sheep rather than look at their own management practices. So I have one client that put in 1,700 lambs, 5 to 6 months old, no grain feeding, mixture of his ewe lambs and his weather lambs because the terrible drought where they were, and there was no sale for the female portion. So he put them into the Magra lamb, which is our branded product, and he's averaging at 5 to 6 months of age off his pasture, which is a lucerne or an alfalfa clover mix. He averaged 27 to 28 kilos for the 1,700 at 5 to 6 months. Another chap that's got ewes from that property that's using our rams as well, and he's struggling to get weight, and his answer is he put them in a feedlot and fed them more, and they just don't like it. So exactly the same genetics, different farm, doing different things, and he's looking as to why. Must be genetic. It's not genetic, it's management. So that's what can be done.
We just butchered some here for some clients, and they hung at 53 to 59 pounds, and they were born in April, and they were butchered about a month ago. So they've been on a little bit of cane hay, and of course all summer they were on just grass. So they were F3s.
Yeah, well, they should carry all the qualities that, if they've been by a purebred ram each time, they should carry most of the qualities that we've been talking about. So it's also I don't know why, but when we're doing grind without any binders in it, you can't really do beef without just as a straight beef mix with nothing else in it. You can't do other lamb like that either. and have it hold together. When you go to cook a patty, it'll fall apart if there's not a bit of egg or crumb or something in it to hold it together. And we're trying to work that out, but we believe it's the omegas and the oleic acid that's causing that.
We'll open up here at the end for some additional questions. I do want to bring Dax into the discussion here before time gets too far away from us. Dax Dietrich is located in Texas and is a senior buyer for the Fulton Market Group. And Dax, if you would just kind of share with the group that's on the Zoom here this evening why you looked at this breed and decided to get involved and a little bit maybe about your background, the company that you're with as well. I think you're on. There you go.
Yep, there we go. Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, my name's Dax Dietrich, down in Schulenburg, Texas, born and raised. I work for a company called Fulton Market Group. We're based out of Chicago. We're the procurement arm for the protein for McDonald's in North America, Australia, Asia, and Europe. We'll be working into a South American market. So got a lot of experience and background in procurement, managing supply chains, and of course, meat quality. That's a big part of our customers' main initiatives, believe it or not. It is 100% ground beef. That's the biggest question I get when I tell people what I do for a living. But yeah, so I've been around the world, especially Australia. My company is Australian based, so I've spent some time in Sydney on numerous occasions. And I had actually came across a breed of sheep from another producer in Australia that was more focused around marbling. Through some connections that I had with a nutritionist from Australia. And that relationship didn't last very long. He wasn't too friendly. But then in researching just how to find a higher quality eating lamb in the US, we stumbled across the Australian white, and that's where the journey began. I've eaten lamb all across the world, South America, US, even Canada. I actually enjoy eating lamb and just hearing about it. And really, the growth qualities was what we really were initially pursuing, but then intrigued about the promises of the low melting point and how good it tastes. And then we actually went and visited Graham in Australia for a week and went to the sale that they had this past September and got to eat my first taste of Australian white lamb, and it was burgers, believe it or not, and it was probably the best hamburger I've ever had. Not hamburger, but lamb burger in general that I had ever had. It was really, really well put together. The bite was really, really consistent, but the flavor of the meat just something of its own. It's not really a lamby flavor. It's not really beefy. It's kind of out there on its own island. So it's just a really high quality product, and I think it's the future of the U.S. lamb industry.
Awesome. Thanks for the feedback. And if anybody has questions for Dax, and Dax, I'm going to ask you a few I've got ready for you here this evening. So obviously you did your homework and you kind of researched this and kind of sounds like early on maybe went down a path that was unfriendly. What have you found, like your involvement with the American Australian White Association and obviously our connection with Graham? What's been the most beneficial thing for you so far in kind of your journey with this breed?
I think it's not really a benefit, but I think it's something exciting as to how small and how green this is. I think that's for everybody that's on this call, it's a really big opportunity. Um, there's just not a lot of people that understand or know even that this breed exists. And as time goes on, it's going to become a bigger and more important breed in the United States. I think it will replace a Dorper more so from the weaning side and the growth of the lamb and how fast they can put on weight. But then from the palatability to a customer is where it really will dominate things. And so I think for it being so fresh and so new, and I, I don't know if that map was the count of registered animals on the U.S. or not, but there's just not very many of them here. And if you're on the call and don't have any or have a small herd, you're just where everybody else is because it is there's not very many of them here. So that's the exciting part. In terms of working with the association, everything's been great. Um, I've spent a lot of time with Graham and his family when I was down there, and they're great. I know they're working on bringing some meat into the United States, which is exciting. So I think with this group and all the minds here and the desire to promote the breed, it's going to kind of take off rapidly here in the next 5 to 10 years.
All right. And I know you've made a commitment, not only an investment, in rams with Tatakill, but also with bringing in embryos here to the U.S. And I did want to address that here before time gets away from us this evening. We have sold out of the shipment that just came in here around the first of the year from Tatakills. Those embryos are all accounted for, and we do have a few folks that we're still waiting on payments. We are allowing them till March 1st to get those payments to us. And then depending on how all that shakes out, there may be a few available after that. But the good news is that Graham is putting together some flush dates there in Australia to flush some more of their top performing donor ewes with their top performing bucks over there. And we will have another shipment coming in this fall. We're looking at probably around that September timeframe here in the U.S., getting a considerable order put together to have brought back in here for the fall for more embryos. So if you'd like to get put on that list for the fall embryo shipment, you can send us an email. Our info email works just fine. It's on the website here. You can get that to us and let us know, approximately how many numbers you'd like. We're going to start a wait list for those, and then we'll be asking for some commitments as we get into the summer to kind of narrow that commitment down, and then have that next shipment coming in this fall that could be put in for spring lambs. So in 2026. Any other questions for Dax, Graham, myself, as we kind of got about 5 minutes left here before we get into a full hour? We don't want to take much more time than that here this evening with everyone, but if anyone does have any general questions for any of us on the board, the group that we've got here on this panel, feel free to either text them in or open up your microphone. We also have, I'll put a shameless plug in for our American Australian White gear. If you go onto our website, there is a apparel store now where you can pick from hoodies, t-shirts, pullovers, jackets, anything you'd like, promoting the brand here in the U.S. You're welcome to jump on there and do that. The proceeds of the sales of those items go towards helping us build up the breed association.
And if everyone on here who is a member or was a member last year, your memberships are due every January. And if you can send us the information, we still are doing checks. John Lipstadt is on here with our registry. We're probably a week or 10 days maybe to credit cards, but be sure to sign up on pedigree.dev also. And then we can patch you through to our members area on our website. So we kind of have two member areas right now. One's on the website and then the pedigree.dev, and you have to be a current paid member for either of those.
As we wrap up here, I've got on the screen March 18th will be our next open Zoom meeting. The focus will be starting your American Australian White sheep flock. So We'll talk some 101 basics if you're new to even raising sheep or raising this particular breed. We'll have topics covering nutrition to animal health and reproduction on that Zoom meeting on March 18th. So you can mark your calendars for that. And we will be sure to post these up on our resource section of the website. I want to thank Kelsey Keeling, who's doing an awesome job keeping our website updated for us. And that's all there. And I noticed John just put in the chat too, the membership sign up and renewals. You can find that on the pedigree.dev website. That information is there as well. So if there's no other questions or things that I missed, David or Sonia, anything else there that you guys want to add?
I don't think so. Just get your memberships in. It's still snail mail, but we'll process them when we get them.
Yeah, we do appreciate that. I want to thank Graham and Dax for both participating in this evening's event. We'll be making a trip over myself to Tatakill here in the 1st of April. And so looking forward to that. And I'm sure we'll do something with our Facebook page with that visit while I'm over there and maybe do some live things as well from Graham there in Australia. So looking forward to that. If you guys need anything at all, please reach out to us through the website. You're welcome to call any of us on the board, any of the folks that are helping here with the association. We're happy to visit with you about the breed, about the benefits of the breed. I know everyone's welcome to have guests at their farms as well and view some of these animals that we have on our operations. Pretty excited about it. I think it's going to be a great year. We're glad the registry is up and running. The embryos are here and being put in, and we're looking forward to getting another order put together for this fall. So with that, thanks and have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks very much. Enjoyed the meeting.